Look at the most powerful companies on earth: Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, the oil giants, even the bank where you keep your own money. Now imagine one single company quietly owns a piece of almost all of them at the same time. You'd think you'd have heard of it, right? You'd think it'd be a household name. But the most powerful financial company in history barely makes a sound. It works in the shadows, and most people couldn't tell you a single thing about it. Its name is BlackRock. And as of 2026, it manages around $13.9 trillion. That number is so big it stops meaning anything, so let me put it another way. Only 2 countries on the entire planet produce more wealth in a year than this one company controls. It's bigger than Japan, bigger than Germany, and yet it has no famous product, no viral ads, no billionaire doing backflips on a stage. So how did a company almost nobody can explain end up with its fingers in nearly every business on the planet? And the bigger question, should that worry us? Buckle up, because the story of BlackRock is stranger and a lot more unsettling than you'd expect. To understand BlackRock, you have to start with a humiliation. Back in the 1980s, a young trader named Larry Fink was Wall Street's golden boy. By 31, he was the youngest managing director at a firm called First Boston, running its single most profitable desk, reportedly adding over $1 billion to the company's bottom line. He was untouchable. Everyone assumed he'd run the whole bank one day. And then, in 1986, it all came crashing down. Fink had made a huge bet on which way interest rates would move. He got it catastrophically wrong. In a single quarter, his desk lost $100 million. Back then, that was a fortune. His reputation was gone almost overnight, and within 2 years, so was his job. But here's the part that actually matters. Fink decided the real problem wasn't the bad bet. It was that nobody, not even him, had truly understood the risk they were sitting on. They'd been flying blind. And he made himself a quiet promise: never again. So in 1988, Fink and 7 partners launched a brand new company, $5 million in seed money squeezed into a single borrowed room inside another firm called Blackstone. They'd later rename it BlackRock. But their pitch wasn't the usual "we'll make you rich." It was something far more boring and far more powerful. "We will measure your risk better than anyone alive." And to do it, they built a machine. They called it Aladdin. It started as software running on one $20,000 computer that literally sat between a fridge and a coffee machine in their cramped little office. Today, Aladdin is arguably the most powerful piece of financial software on the planet. It's a risk monitoring brain, and it doesn't just watch BlackRock's own money. Banks, insurers, pension funds, even rival firms all plug into it. By some estimates, Aladdin now keeps an eye on roughly $25 trillion in assets. That's nearly double everything BlackRock itself manages. Think about that for a second. While everyone else was busy arguing over who owns what, BlackRock quietly built the rails the entire financial system runs on. And owning the rails, it turns out, is a far better business than owning the cargo. But the moment BlackRock went from big to unstoppable came out of a disaster. In 2008, the global financial system was on fire, and when the US government needed someone to defuse the toxic assets sitting right at the heart of the crash, who do you think they called? BlackRock. The firm, built on an obsession with measuring risk, was now being hired to clean up the single biggest risk failure in modern history. Then, a year later, came the masterstroke. BlackRock bought a company called Barclays Global Investors, and with it, a giant family of funds called iShares. Now, one of these funds, an ETF, is basically a simple basket that lets ordinary people invest in hundreds of companies at once, cheaply with a single click. They exploded. Today, iShares is the biggest ETF provider in the world, and here's the quiet trick in all of this. Every time millions of people pour their savings and their pensions into these funds, that money flows into the shares of thousands of companies, and BlackRock becomes a major shareholder in basically all of them. Not through some evil plan, but because the whole planet decided to invest through it. And this is where it starts to feel genuinely unsettling. BlackRock is now one of the biggest shareholders in a huge slice of the world's largest companies, usually sitting right beside two other silent giants, Vanguard and State Street. Between them, they show up on the share register of almost every major corporation you can name. So people say it, BlackRock owns everything. That's the line that gets passed around the internet. But here's the truth most of those videos won't tell you, and I want to be straight with you. BlackRock doesn't actually own most of that money. It belongs to ordinary clients, your neighbor's pension, a teacher's retirement fund, regular savers like you. BlackRock just manages it on their behalf. So they own everything? Technically, that's a myth. But, and this is the part that really matters, there is a massive difference between owning shares and controlling them. Because while the money belongs to the clients, it's usually BlackRock that gets to vote those shares at company meetings, who runs a company, how the bosses get paid, which direction the whole business takes. BlackRock's vote carries serious weight in those rooms, across thousands of companies all at once. It doesn't own the world, it just gets a say in how a frightening amount of it is run. And that is a kind of power no single company in history has ever held. Naturally, that much power makes people nervous. Critics point out that BlackRock has become almost too cozy with governments, advising treasuries and central banks through crisis after crisis, sometimes handed contracts with no competitive bidding at all, which raises some very obvious questions. For years, Fink leaned hard on companies about climate and so-called ESG investing, then quietly backed off when the political winds turned, earning him accusations of hypocrisy from pretty much every direction at once. One billionaire mocked his swelling influence by joking that he didn't realize Larry Fink had been made God. And yet, through all of it, BlackRock just keeps getting bigger. So let's be fair, because the truth is rarely all one thing. BlackRock didn't claw its way to the top through fraud or some cartoon villain scheme. It won by being early to two painfully boring ideas almost everyone else underrated, obsessively measuring risk and making investing cheap and simple for normal people. And those are genuinely good things. The uncomfortable part isn't that BlackRock did something evil, it's that doing everything right can still end with one private company sitting dead in the center of the global economy, holding a vote in how thousands of corporations are run and quietly operating the software the entire market leans on. Which leaves us with the real question, the one with no clean answer. In a free market, is it actually healthy for this much influence to live inside a single company that most people have never even heard of? Larry Fink took the worst moment of his career, a $100 million humiliation, and turned it into the most powerful financial empire on earth. As a business story, it is genuinely incredible, but it's also a warning about how real power tends to gather, not with noise and not with headlines, but quietly in the background, one ordinary investment at a time, until one day you look up and realize the company that owns a piece of everything is one you can barely even describe. Now, if the company that quietly owns the world fascinated you, you have got to see how another financial giant pulled off something just as wild. Click the video on screen and I'll see you there. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. You're a legend, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.